We're here today in Coomhola, Ireland, just up the way from Bantry Bay. It's June 27th, 2025, and we're here talking with Mark Boyden and Furniss.
So yes, we're here once again with Mark Boyden of West Cork to discuss his recent endeavors. Mark has recently taken a back seat at his NGO that he founded, Streamscapes, and he's been working for the last 3 years on a Master's of Arts and Psyche. The culmination of all of that has been a dissertation that Mark calls the Black Salmon. So Mark, what is behind the Black Salmon?
Yeah, good question. I suppose, so there's the dissertation, which you're reading at the moment. And that full title, just to throw in the subtitle, is The Black Salmon Goes Her Own Way, Instances of Creative Behavioural Aberrancy in Symbol, Soul and Society. I suppose, the original motivation for me is that I'm really interested in adolescence. I'm interested in the process of my own adolescence, and then just as a phenomenon in the human life cycle. What happens to us during adolescence, puberty, adolescence, just these massive changes, physical, psychic, one thing another. And it's, it just seems such a time of such great moment, and, which ends up defining people and their path in life. Just seems to have such an important impact upon that. And I have this suspicion that for a brief moment during our adolescence, to one degree or another, we all go through kind of a shamanic phase. And, the outward signs of that might be, spiky hair or earrings or nose rings or whatever, or tattoos. And it's that striving for individuality, for identity, but it's also qualified by who I am not. Before you find out who you are, you must find out who you are not. And usually, for a lot of us, the first people we're not are our parents. We draw the line, we rebel, we say, Jesus, I'm not that, and we're embarrassed to be seen with them and one thing or another. I think this is all really, really healthy. But, and then, by age 50, you might look at yourself and say, oh God, I'm just like my parent. But it's that scintilla of difference that's achieved during that rebellious phase of adolescence, which I think is crucial to kind of a psychic evolution of all of us and of the race and of the community and one thing or another. And it is vital to the individual as well. But arising out of that then is this current, for want of a better word, of proclamation of identity. And so when we come to salmon, we all know that salmon return to the place, to spawn, to the very place where they hatch. Sometimes the same bed of gravel in the same tributary of the same river. Mm-hmm. And that's largely true. But crucially, there are exceptions to that. And this is what interested me. And this is what led me coining the term the black salmon, which, as I've said before, kind of suggested itself. I mean, it's just like black sheep or black swan or other black variations on the theme. And so the black salmon, she says, no, I don't want to go back to where I'm from. I want to go somewhere new. And I want to try this waterfall. Perhaps, and the function of it in terms of advantages for salmon nests are that a tributary might not have salmon in it and might not have it for very good reasons. You know, there might be an impassable waterfall, but in time maybe geology has changed, and if a salmon were to attempt to get up that tributary, with an almighty leap, she might just make it. And so she's successful in that. Another salmon senses her up there and goes up, they spawn, and they spawn a whole new race, who then return to that place to spawn. And so there's this kind of give and take, there's this kind of consistency, relative consistency of the community, and then there's these variations on a theme from individuals. And when you think of it, they're both essential. The ones who are represented by the straight and narrow, they confer great advantage by over many, many generations returning to the same place. They're adapting to local flow characteristic, feed availability, water chemistry, etc., etc., and thereby, you know, increasing chances of survival. But it's the black salmon who then find new habitat for salmonness to expand as well. And when you think of it, if all salmon did return to the place where they came from, they'd all be dead, because, for instance, here in Europe, when the Ice Age came to Europe, there were glaciers. Where we're sitting now, there was a glacier at least 1,500 meters above us, a mountain of ice, and rivers, of course, didn't exist. And so salmon moved down into the rivers of Africa over hundreds and hundreds of generations.
Right.
It's the black salmon who sensed this existential, environmental, ecological threat and responded, you know, one stream at a time to move south. And but so that as a theme interests me, and I'm in the thesis, I'm looking at the application of the black salmon, and the black salmon as kind of, as I say, you know, creative behavioural aberrancy. And so we're talking disruption, we're talking Jung's and Neumann's take on the visionary artist, and the visionary artist's relationship with their society, and how they perceive things that the rest of society doesn't, and it's their response. And Jung very much says that, you know, that the response in our society is often artistic innovation. So I'm equating it with that kind of behavior with black salmon as well.
Right. So that explains sort of the symbol of the black salmon. How does it relate to your own experiences?
Well, I suppose, you know, the doing the dissertation enabled me to describe, you know, the black salmon within, and obviously, you know, if I've seen this, then, you know, to some degree, things, you know, become projections of inner nature and one thing and another. So, so I am trying to plumb and divine what it is within me, and I do sense that in my own life, you know, I have been a bit of a disruptor at times. I hope to God I've been a bit of an innovator in a positive, creative way, and so, like, literally, that's part of the subtitle, because I'm looking at that behavioural aberrancy in symbol. And I should mention that there was this arts-based component to the research as well.
Oh, yes.
I did do a ceramics apprenticeship, and so I was working with that black salmon theme. but also, so I was literally and figuratively working with earth to develop the symbol, and then using that as kind of a springboard for contemplations and reflections upon that symbol. And then the soul is actually, I am looking, autobiographically at my own life and my own experiences, and how I was drawn to that not only salmon, but more particularly the black salmon as well. So yeah, so there's I put up my hand, there's a black salmon at play very much in the course of my life.
So circling back then to the symbology of the black salmon, how did your, I believe it's called Jungian-based, art-based research?
Yeah, Jabber, Jungian arts-based research. And so you create art to create meaning. Mm-hmm. And you use art and artistic endeavor as a means of reflection and meaning making. So that's one of the principal methodologies at play here, certainly in the early stages of the dissertation. Literally working with the clay and then going through it, then decorating it, firing it, and that was all hugely instructive in terms of developing my black salmon theme.
Right. And what specific parts of it do you think were most influenced by that ceramics research?
It's a totality. It's a wholeness. Exploring the symbol for its own sake, was all part of that. But then there were moments where I was concerned with autoethnography, that kind of autobiographical thing. And then what also came up very strongly was a geopolitical application. Who are the black salmon among nations? Because if we're talking individuals and communities, we can speak about me and my soul in relation to my community. But we can also speak of a nation in relation to the group of nations. And Singer, there's been a lot of increasing research in this field. Singer and others have looked at the same principles of psychology and the relationship of individuals with their community can be applied to the individuation of nations in relation to groups of nations. And what I very much took from it is that Ireland is more or less a black salmon among nations. Ireland, holds to her own principles much more and in a much more consistent way than a lot of countries. I mean, you can see this in Ireland, and this would be related, now I'm not going to go too deep into this, but it would be related to what are known as the cultural complexes. Mm-hmm. And obviously there's personal complexes, but then again, the equivalent among nations is that there are cultural complexes. And these are formed over centuries, even millennia, for a specific culture, a specific nation, a specific people. And and obviously what's really influenced Ireland in terms of cultural complexes is like 800 years of occupation, the suffering a senseless famine when really there was plenty of food around. Mm-hmm. And I think that translates into like the 1937 Constitution, which, without mentioning neutrality, spells out several clauses which advocate for the peaceful resolution of conflicts between nations, etc., abiding by the rule of law, holding nations to account. And I think this arises a lot of those, out of those Irish cultural complexes, that there is an insistence, pardon me, and a particular sensitivity to social justice issues, human rights, and we see that in terms of Ireland insisting in the last 15 months, say, to recognize the state of Palestine. And I think I think the world is in a degree of peril now, and I think that the world is in desperate need of an agency that is capable of really asserting the imperative of human rights at the moment. It's dodgy ground, because if you favor one side, you can be accused of being biased in one direction. Achieving kind of the ability to enter into conflict resolution, one must really tiptoe and be very, very careful. But I think that Ireland does have, as other commentators have pointed out, that there's this rich tradition of diplomatic skill. And so Ireland is actually in a great position to assert that neutrality in a really positive way in today's world.
And a positive disruption seems like a major theme.
Yeah.
For you,
Yeah, very much.
Do you think that Ireland's long history of both emigration and now in the modern sense immigration reflects on that symbol as well?
Perhaps, yes. I mean, there's different pressures that lead to emigration/immigration, and even in salmon populations there can be similar pressures, but there seems to be, I think the actions of the black salmon are beyond overt pressures. That quite often they are provoked, that behavior is provoked by something that is mysterious, and the reasons for which can only be realized in hindsight, maybe many generations hence. There is this overt and covert scene going on there, and like I say, a given salmon might have a fine life, but she just wants to try something new.
And it sort of springs forth from that Jungian creative, unconscious, sort of perhaps unknown, unclear.
Yeah, it's I'm not a Jungian. I'm not anything. They're all very helpful tools. But I think that whatever she's doing is beyond young. If you'll forgive me. She's being true to her own nature. And that's beyond concepts.
Right. Well, thank you, Mark. It's lovely to talk to you, and well done on your dissertation.
Yeah, it's great.
Congratulations.
It's great you're here, and it's great you brought your father along with you.
Kudos,
and he's been behaving himself
he has
quite well this time.
Yeah.
So thanks so much to the Furnisses.